This is episode 3 of the NapCast. I always forget the name of this podcast. Yeah. So it's Wendy. Wendy is not here with us today. I am Brittany, and with me is Cricket.
Hello.
Hello. So today we're going to do something that's not types of witches. That will be out the following week when we have Wendy with us again, because I really want her to be there to learn about the rest of them, because we haven't even gotten to tech witches or pop culture witches or anything like that. That'll be exciting.
I'm super, super excited to elaborate on some of those, because I love how creative it is.
It is. It's super cool. Which, actually, I keep saying witches, like witch is, instead of like the plural for witch. And I'm like, witches, ha ha ha, I like them. But today I had some questions from people that wanted to know more about witches because they were very interested. And so I have like 5 questions to ask you.
Okay. And
you can give me your like anecdotal opinion and then like your personal opinion. Like let's start off with like some basic questions that aren't questions that people gave me.
Okay.
For instance, how many witches do you think you've met in your life? Or pagans or okay, well first let's define witches. Okay. Because I think all the questions that I have are pertaining to actual people that practice witchcraft. Okay. Not so much pagans. Okay. So how many of those do you think you've ever encountered?
Oh, it's really hard to say because I think everybody's witchcraft is so different. Yeah. And I think that based on the very conservative, politically, religiously area that I live in, I think that...
she means the South.
I do.
She means the South.
I do. I mean the Bible Belt. I think that a lot of people kind of conceal it. And I think as you grow and you practice yourself, I think you learn to pick up on things. Yeah. And I think you sort of, get witch radar. And it's like, I know what you're doing there.
Oh, yeah. That reminds me, the other day, you had posted something on Facebook. And it was like this guy didn't know why his girlfriend was so awesome, but also did these weird things.
Yes. So I think it was originally a Reddit post that someone screenshotted and put on Twitter. And then of course it got shared to Facebook because, cross-platform everything.
Exactly.
And this guy had posted on Reddit about his girlfriend who was really cute and,
pretty much perfect.
Yeah.
He was like, she's great and fantastic. She's very
cook. She makes all of her own dresses and things.
She's very educated, very smart, great at her job, but she's weird. And I was like, what do you mean weird? And so I'm like reading it and it's like, okay, she does some of that vulture stuff, which is, that's a little weird, but I would look past that. I wouldn't be extremely weird. I would be concerned like health-wise. I'd be making sure like, honey, are you, like, making sure to not touch, like, the dead animals without gloves or, like, not touching any of their organs? You know what I mean?
One of the things, I've had a lot of friends who practice vulturing, which is the process of picking up a lot of, like, animals that are deceased, usually by roadkill or something. Right. You find them. Yeah. And taking them home and using them to make artistic pieces, usually using the bones or the skins or something of that nature. Yeah. So I've had a lot of friends that do that. Actually, the gem show that we're going to, the person that I used to go to years before, to the gem show with, there were many times when we'd be on the way up there and it's like, she would stop on the side of the road and pick somebody up and, so like she'd stop and pick up a dead animal and it would just sit in the back of the car. Yeah. And, it's one of those things where it's like, it's never really bothered me. Right. But I guess I could see where in traditional culture, it's kind of frowned upon and people kind of look at it as weird, but.
Well, if they think that you're going to eat it, that's kind of rude. But.
Well, I mean, even.
I mean, it depends on what kind of animal.
If you're able to discern that the animal, like the meat on the animal is clean, I would prefer that someone or something eat the meat and it not go to waste rather than, you know what I mean? Like,
it's just for me, coming from like a medical perspective, it's so hard to like know whether or not the meat is really clean. So for me,
unless you have training in that kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But I have no problem with people picking stuff up to either do like taxidermy work or like they want to keep the skins or the bones or anything. That doesn't bother me. But I could see that would be the one thing that weirded him out. But then he was like, she sews all her own clothes, and I was like, what the fuck is wrong with that? Like, she just has her own aesthetic. Why you gotta be rude?
Or I think there was another one about how she
she likes plants. Yes. And I was like, bitch, don't at me. don't at me though.
And talking about how she grows poisonous plants and stuff like that, and I'm like, man, I want to meet this chick.
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell if I want to like be best friends with her or be her
or date her.
Or all three.
I was like, this sounds like a fun girl.
Yes.
She doesn't like to get super drunk and just do nothing. She just does her life. And I was like, the other thing I was not understanding of is like, he was upset that she looks into medical stuff. And I was like, don't you want someone who is medically trained in like at least first aid?
Maybe it's just me because I've been chronically ill my whole life, but it's like, I'm kind of like that too, where I'll like read medical journals and things like that, especially for things that actually pertain to me and my chronic illnesses. Like, I totally go in there and read medical journals. I'm bringing medical journals and research papers and stuff like that to my doctors. The one thing that kind of got me for that one was he talked about how she had a great big bed with like all of these pillows, and I'm like, well, I'm out.
First of all, you do have a lot of pillows,
I
love them. How many pillows are in this room right now?
A lot.
4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. There's 14 pillows from what I can see right now.
Yeah.
Oh, and not counting the floor pillows or the pillows in the chair behind Cricket. Yeah. There's a lot of pillows, but nothing's wrong with that. I like the pillows.
I love pillows. I love pillows. They're my favorite thing. Also, and Mogget's pillow in the window.
Oh shit, Mogget's pillow in the window.
So Mogget is my pet cat. He is a gray and white. He's a gray and white tabby, and he's a little bit mischievous. Like right now, I think he's chewing on one of my plants.
He did help us out. You guys will find out that he helped us out a little bit. So you'll get to hear that story later at the end. So now that we have, where was I going with that whole witch story? I had no idea. I'd read it, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of people that don't know exactly what witches are, or like
we'll have to post that Reddit story article.
Yeah, we'll have to link it. Yeah. We'll have to link it in the description. So I had been talking about witches and whatnot because we've been doing the podcast, and then people had questions for you.
Excellent.
And yes, so I guess we'll start with the first one. And so there was actually like several different kinds of people. There was one person that actually is an atheist, but she's like into witchcraft.
Yeah.
And then there was this other woman who's like the religious studies major. So she's like very interested in all sorts of religions. And she was asking me all these questions.
Interested more in like the spirituality side of things.
Yeah, you're going to be like, oh, this is her question. As soon as you hear it, because it's like it's actually 3 questions in one. But that's fine. And then there's some that people were just like wondering after they listened to like the last one. They were like really curious about it. So
yeah, I'm so excited.
Yeah. So the first one is, in your opinion, is there more female witches than male witches? And if so, why do you think that is? And do you think like women are more drawn to paganism or like witchcraft than men are?
I would definitely say so. I think the majority of the practicing witches that I've met have been female. And I think that comes from, centuries of this sort of, for lack of a better terms, like taking away power from women. And I think that...
subjugating. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just going to be very real.
No, you're
I'm
good.
not going to... Yeah.
And I think that... when we started to see women fighting for their rights and really using their voices and speaking up is really when we started to see a lot of rise of what we would call modern paganism or witchcraft. So I think that, especially since in traditional Wicca, which is where the movement really started to gain traction, you know, men and women were revered as equal.
Right, yeah. Because there's a god and a goddess.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I think that that sort of spirituality mindset, when we're so used to having these Judeo-Christian religions where the man is sort of valued over the woman, I think that this sort of thing was very radical, and I think that that's one of the reasons that it caught on.
Right.
Is the fact that, you know, there's this equity between male and female. Now, I think with our ever-evolving sexuality as a culture and gender as a culture, I think that we've started to get away from traditional Wicca. Yeah. Because it focuses too much on the binary system. Right. And I think that there's really just a spectrum out there.
You were talking about the two guys that kind of, like, developed Wicca at the beginning, and they kind of had differing opinions on, like...
They did, yeah.
The male and female, the gender sort of thing, and that's why they broke apart, yeah.
On specific gender roles, on, and also on sexual identity. And the way that people chose to express themselves either sexually or romantically. Okay. I think was the main differing thing. Because there was Gardner and there was Alexander, and they had a tiff over that, I believe. Right, yeah. But I think that, especially recently when we're seeing more visibility of people in the LGBT community, I think that we're sort of getting away from that binary system, which I love. Right, yeah. And I think that people are able to use this personalized tool like witchcraft, like paganism, which is basically like, you know, build your own spirituality, which I think is fantastic, to really serve their own purposes and needs. It's sort of, you create it yourself. Right. Which I think is
Which is very empowering versus like a lot of other religions that kind of are very... I worded it the other way the other day, that religion is nice because there is some structure to it and you feel that you're part of a larger whole. Yeah. And that's something that a lot of people like about religion. But then sometimes it becomes too rigid and then it becomes legalistic. Like there's rules and laws that you have to follow. Like there's some that are common sense that everyone should follow, like do no harm. Right. But then there's other things where it's like, don't eat shrimp. Yeah. And I'm like... But why, though? Shrimp
or is... it's okay for you to beat your wife.
Or Cricket can't eat shrimp. But
I can't. It makes me very sad. And it's so funny, because it's like, for years, Mom and I used to eat shellfish all the time. Like, when they would have shrimp on special at the grocery store, we'd, like, buy a pound of shrimp and boil the shrimp and get some cocktail sauce and some bread. And, like, that's what we would eat. Just peel and eat the shrimp right out of the pot. And it's so funny to me to think that I did that when it's like, I can't even be around it now to the point where it's like, even the fumes can, like, start to make my throat close up. Yeah. So it's funny, the way that the body works when you become, you know, sort of used to things and then you get away from it.
And then your body is like, oh, it's finally gone. We can build our defenses. Yep. And you're like, okay, you're just going to fuck me over now. Yeah. Okay, I got you. Yeah, but I mean, it's completely fine for me to eat shrimp. It used to be fine, body. Remember when we had good times eating boiled shrimp?
And actually, one of the things that I think that people have gotten away from Wicca...
Oh, she brought a book out. Yes, she brought a book.
I have this giant cabinet over here that has gorgeous creeping plants that go all the way down.
She has a witch armoire.
I do.
She has a witch armoire.
That's full of books and incense and crystals and everything.
It's dope.
It's pretty cool.
It's very, very cool.
But I have a book here. It's by Mark Ventimiglia, if you're interested. It's called The Wiccan Read. And it's all about the different laws and teachings of Wicca. So there are actually 13 laws of, quote-unquote, the witch, which actually applies more to traditional Wiccans. Right. There's also the Wiccan Read, and it goes through, like, the entirety of the thing, and it explains it to you. So it's actually a really interesting book if you're interested in, like, the theology of Wicca itself. I think it's really, really good.
That's really neat. So you are no longer like a Wiccan.
Correct.
What in here do you so you must disagree with certain things in here.
Yes.
So what are, like, you don't have to go through all of them, but what are some of the things that you first started realizing, oh, I don't really vibe with that. That's not really something for me.
I think definitely I kind of got out of the binary system. I tend to work more as a whole with a greater spirit that I think has many different aspects to it. One of which I see as the goddess Hecate that I work with. I kind of talked about her before.
Right. So speaking of spiritual divine beings, let's go to our second question.
Can I finish on this one first?
Yes.
So I think that there was that. And then there's also, the actual Wiccan read says, do no harm, do what you wish as long as it doesn't do any harm to anyone.
Right.
So a lot of people denote that as very anti-cursing someone or any kind of magic as such as that.
Right.
I personally do not agree with that. I've had a lot of really intense personal struggles and traumas in my life. And I do believe in, this sort of karmic resonance where things do come back around to people.
Right.
But I also believe that we have to be our own advocate with karma.
Cricket is saying that you should be like the Batman of witches for yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
You should be the vigilante witch. You should take justice into your own hands.
Me personally, that's what vibes with me. And it's one of those things where it's like, kind of as I talked about in the last podcast where I did the curse with all of the googly eyes in the jar. That was to sort of help karma along.
Right, but that to me isn't like a curse or a hex. That's just someone
Well, I've done those too, so.
Right. But like, for instance, I wouldn't say... Maybe someone else who was Wiccan and was like very much like, the read says we shouldn't do that. And you would be like, it's not hurting someone, it's just exposing someone who's awful. You know what I mean?
Well, okay.
Exposed.
If we want to talk about things that I've done that are a little bit more seedy, I lived, my ex-boyfriend and I lived with a guy for a few months. And honestly, it was kind of a real shit show. Yeah. He was not a great landlord. And one of the issues that we ran into is that we had bed bugs.
Ooh.
And he refused to get the house fumigated. Instead, his solution was to get a kerosene heater, turn it on at max temperature, shut the door for the room, put towels under the door, and try to kill the bed bugs with heat. He did this several times.
Does it work?
No.
I don't think so. Okay, first of all, why would you buy a whole kerosene heater? Fumigating can't be that much.
He didn't have any heat in the house.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then the AC also broke later that summer when it was like 106 degrees outside.
Jesus.
And he was off on a trip to Japan to visit his sister and didn't get it fixed before he left. But,
wow.
Yeah. It was, so I got pissed, packed up all my shit while he was on his trip to Japan. And before I left the house, there is a curse that you can do in hoodoo called hot footing.
Hot footing?
Hot footing.
Okay.
It is very similar to what it sounds like. So the issue that we had with the bed bugs is the fact that they were only located in our room.
Okay.
And he tried to blame that on us, which was not the case.
No.
And tried to deny them for several months while I was very sure of what I was seeing. And so I got mad and I said,
I'd be fucking pissed.
You want to go? Let's do this. I'm a hot foot these bed bugs. Now, hot footing is to get someone to move out of a place that you want or to leave you alone or, that sort of nature. So I hot-footed the bed bugs to get them to leave my room and go throughout the rest of the house.
Yeah.
Which they eventually did.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a matter of time.
Yeah. But it's a really, really interesting curse. It uses all sorts of different things, namely chili powder, which is where it gets its name.
Oh.
So
that's crazy cool.
Yep. So,
I feel like that's much nicer than putting laxatives in someone's coffee, which I've done. So, I mean, to each their own. I prefer to just do things to medically fuck up your body. Cricket just does it to medically fuck up your soul. Metaphysically fuck up your soul.
Metaphysically fuck up your soul. There you go. All right. Yeah, so I've done a few things like that, where it's definitely been me sort of helping karma along.
Right, yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like I definitely had a hand in their suffering, but it's one of those things where I also feel like the universe was going to give it to him anyway.
Right, exactly.
So I
and you were just helping it along.
Yeah, I just helped it manifest.
Giving it a guiding hand.
Yeah.
Like, that's the motherfucker that did that to me. Something needs to happen.
I mean, it could be worse. I could be calling upon Loki.
There you go. Yeah, that would fuck up
I've had
life.
a few friends that have worked with Loki one-on-one.
Oh, really?
Yes, and with a lot of the trickster gods, chaos gods, like Loki, you can ask them for something, and they'll do it. But it's sort of like when you work with the djinn or the genie, and you have to be really specific about your wishes, because they'll do that, but they'll find a way to do it in the most roundabout, ass-backwards way that you would never expect in your entire life.
That's me! Oh my god, if I died and became something, it would be a trickster god.
Yeah.
Someone was literally like, Blossoming Sun, which is my online handle. Will you draw me a dragon? Any type of dragon will do. And I drew Spyro the dragon.
Nice.
Because I knew that they wanted a dragon, but Spyro's my favorite.
Yeah.
And Spyro's fake, not a real dragon, but no dragons are real.
That's true.
So, I just drew an extremely cartoony dragon that was probably not what they expected, because their name is from Lord of the Rings. So they were probably expecting Smaug or something. And I was like, you're not getting Smaug today! You're getting Spyro.
Man, I want a dragon so bad.
Dragons would be great.
I had a friend who had a pet alligator.
Oh my god, that reminds me when I was little. My parents took me to Florida, and they took me to an alligator farm, and then I picked up one of the baby alligators, and I wouldn't put it down, and my mom was like, we have to go, and I said, this is mine now. We're taking, and she was like, we can't have a pet alligator, and I was like, no, this is mine now.
Yeah.
And I would not put the alligator down, and I cried when she took it away from me.
Yeah.
She was like, she will tell that story to anyone because she finds it so funny now, but I legitimately would not let that alligator go. And I was like, I want this alligator to be my pet. But then she got me a cat, so it was fine.
Yeah.
Those are almost the same thing.
But yeah, my childhood best friend, she used to live in Florida, and they used to live up in New Jersey, then they moved to Florida, then they moved to where I am now. And they... she's always been really, really just funny, and just one of those people that's just like super talkative, super charismatic, super is going to get her way no matter what. And I love her for it. And she found this baby alligator outside of the house, brought it home, put it in the bathtub, told her siblings not to tell, and literally kept this baby alligator in the tub for I don't know how long, until her parents found out, and she was so sad when they made him get rid of it.
It's so sad.
It was great.
Lady alligator lovers unite.
Yes.
I hope you have great alligator friends. So, the next question, so we were talking about you specifically work with Hecate.
Yes.
Do a lot of people end up doing that, where they find like a god or goddess? Do you think in general that people find a specific god or goddess to work with versus just having one and another?
You know, I feel like paganism is so varied.
Yeah.
I think that it's hard to say. I know some witches that work specifically with some pantheons, and pantheon would be like a specific culture, like someone is only working with Greek gods. Hellenic, yes. So that would be a pantheon.
Yeah.
Or Celtic, that would be a different pantheon.
Right, yeah.
Or Norse, which is really fun. So
she heard like this beeping, and I also heard the same beeping, and we were like, what is that beeping? We don't know. So if you heard a beeping as well, congratulations.
I think there might be a phone ringing next door that I can hear or something.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. So there's the different pantheons, which are like the different cultures of things.
I think it really just depends on your spiritual path.
Okay.
I think a lot of people do work with specific angels or guides or goddesses or gods on their path. I think they certainly get called to certain people. A lot of people have a patron or a matron deity that they work with, sometimes exclusively, sometimes not.
Okay.
I know that a lot of people work with Pan or Papa Legba or different Erzulis or all sorts of different things. I think it really just depends on the person.
Okay.
It's really hard to say. I know a lot of the people that I know specifically do work with one goddess or god or another, almost exclusively. But I do know a lot of people that work with Hecate exclusively too. So,
do you think that's just because you're drawn to those other people, or you happen to be looking for the things that Hecate guides you to, and she just kind of brings you to those people?
I definitely think it's the latter. I think that I'm definitely a believer that people are put in our paths to sort of help us grow.
Yeah.
And I believe that she's definitely brought me closer to a lot of those people.
Right.
And it's one of those things where it's like I don't always realize it when I first meet them, but as I go on, it's like I start to see like the underlying the undertones of like Hecate like having her hand in it.
Right.
So for me spiritually, I do think that she definitely brings those people to me.
Okay, so you were in reference to Hecate and all this sort of divinity stuff. The person that is the religious studies major, she asked. She wanted to know personally for you, how do you see divine beings? Like, do you see them as concepts? Do you see, like, if you see Hecate in your mind, or you picture her, you refer to her, do you actually see her as a person? Do you see her as, like, a greater spirit? And then she also wanted to know, so you just talked about, like, how people typically, like, worship one god or one goddess or whatnot. We kind of answered the second part of the question, like, is there a difference, like, between, you know, offering stuff to a goddess versus a god, or is it just kind of like their preferences, like the god and goddess's preferences?
If
you can answer the first part and then you can answer the second part, I can ask it over again too.
No, it's good. It's a really, really interesting question because I do believe in a greater spirit.
Right.
More of the, you know, indigenous sort of idea of a great spirit. And I do see certain aspects of that within other gods and goddesses. It's really interesting because I feel like they are somehow connected.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel that they are separate. And I think that the reason we personify these energies, these entities, into these different gods and goddesses or spirits, angels, whatever you want to call them, I think is to help us really understand them.
Yeah.
So I think that it's really one of those things where, for me personally, I think it's just the way that they manifest. And I believe that this is a way that helps me connect to her specifically.
So you feel like, in a way, it's like Hecate, you relate to her in the best way. So, like, you really relate to her versus whereas if you picked, like, Apollo, you're like, fuck Apollo. I don't really give a shit about him. Not to say actually fuck Apollo. I'm just saying in general.
I mean, you really relate. Apollo though.
But you really connect with Hecate. You really relate to her. You can feel, you know, you have, you know.
So there's a really great blog that I follow called Keeping Her Keys. You can find it on Pathos. And we can link that in the show
Pathos
notes.
is just a great... I will just link really Pathos, and you can just search Keeping Her Keys, because Pathos is really just a website if you're interested in any sort of spirituality.
Yeah.
It's literally literally for anyone. It's Christianity, it's atheism, it's literally all sorts of paganism.
Yep.
It's so crazy cool. They also have psychological stuff.
Yep.
It's very neat. So if you have not heard of Patheos, it's awesome.
If you're interested in any kind of spirituality, or whether to practice yourself, or just as a, just an interesting read or as a study, it's really, really interesting because it's written by individual writers who keep blogs of their own opinions and experiences.
Yep.
So, but the one that I really like for Hecate is Keeping Her Keys. And I think the woman's name who runs it is Cindy.
That sounds familiar.
She's wonderful. Yeah. Absolutely wonderful. And she kind of goes into a lot of the different aspects of Hecate. And it's sort of helped me deepen my practice and working with her and connecting with her, because she talks more about how Hecate is this guardian of the marginalized. She is this protector. She is, the creator, the destroyer. She's a leader. She's, all of these different aspects that I think that I needed when I began my journey. And as I've grown through my journey, I still need. Yeah. I think it's that ever evolving sort of thing where she's so versatile. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are drawn to her, I think, because, she's a goddess of witchcraft. And I mean, if you're going into, paganism with the intent to practice witchcraft, I mean, why wouldn't you work with the goddess of witchcraft?
Right, yeah.
But I think that she comes off very intimidating to a lot of people. So, especially being, this guardian of the underworld, this chthonic deity. But for me, I've had a lot of spiritual experiences myself with entities that I would say are no longer alive, that have passed on to whatever is next. So I think that I was really drawn to that side of her more so than someone else might have been, because I felt sort of understood. Right. And I think that that's really the thing, is that we pick these aspects of these deities that we really respond to. And I really think that that's just how it goes. It's a really, really interesting question, because it's something that I've tried to quantify in my mind. Yeah. And it's something that I'm not really sure I understand. Right. But it's a really, really interesting concept that I've mulled over before. So that's a really, really good question.
Yeah. And so I really agree with you, like, having the idea of, like, a greater spirit. So, like, for me, I stick with Christianity. And it's just, like, I have my qualms with it, and I would not be considered, like, a fundamentalist or a normal Christian by any means. A lot of people would be. One of my old bosses said that I was the only cool Christian that she knew. And I was like, cool. All right. And I had just become a Christian, because prior to that, my family, I have grown up in a very atheist family, like anti-theist, if you would. And it was just like me being the black sheep. I was like, oh, this Jesus guy sounds pretty cool. And I'm very much like a hippie sort of person, very carefree. And then I also have this very liberal background. And so in my mind, number one, people who are Christians now have no fucking clue what Greek or Latin, what it said in the Bible. No one speaks Latin anymore. It's a dead language. You cannot convince me to make me believe that you, being only like 60 years old, you do not know 1,000-year-old civilization's true language. You cannot tell me exactly what a Bible says, because you're going to use your life experience and what you've learned and what other people told you and told you to believe. You are not actually going to know what it says, because you did not live in the times of the Romans, in the times of people when they were speaking Latin. So you don't actually know. No matter how much you want to, you'll never know. The Library of Alexandria is gone. I'm very sad about it. God. I know, right? I'm very sad. I'm very, very sad.
Any bookworm history nerd is just like absolutely distraught. Still.
Every time. Every time we bring up the Library of Alexandria.
Oh, it feels like someone has just stabbed me in the heart and is just twisting the knife.
So it's like, okay, I have to go on the word of all these other people that have told me this is what this means. Mm-hmm. And I have to define for myself, what does that mean for me? What does that mean to me? Is that exactly how I think it would have been interpreted? Mm-hmm. And no, I don't think it would have been. And as like a very liberal Christian woman, I definitely believe, sorry fellas, but men, for the majority, wrote the books that are in the Bible. And Constantinople is the person that was like, yeah, we're going to put those and call it the Bible. That's what we're going to do. So a man decided what stories were going to go in there. Yeah. And it's like, okay, I get that. I understand. You're just trying to do the best that you can. But still, you're all colored with these... There's politicking that I'm sure to this day has been happening. So there's politics that happened back in the day. Mm-hmm. It's everyone wants to like make the Bible a very divine source. Yeah. And I agree that it was inspired and the people that wrote it originally were inspired by God and they only had good intentions when writing it. But I don't think that as time went on that people really respected the original meaning. And so, because there's so many different versions of it.
Yes, and that's exactly what I was going to chime in with too.
Is so many different versions.
There's so many different versions because each, when we go back and we look at different politics and we look at reigns of different kings, they would actually publish different versions of the Bible that would be altered for their agenda.
Yeah. It was also to update it for the language, but it was also for agenda.
Yeah. Yeah. But there were some things that were added in or taken out because of someone's agenda, someone's political agenda.
Exactly.
So it's one of those things that I think it was, I would agree with that. I'm not someone who is anti-Christian. I don't practice Christianity.
But you can understand that there are problematic things that have happened throughout time because of Christianity. Yeah. And it's just like, I get those as a person who practices it, but I really like Jesus. I just think he's a swell guy.
I think he's a cool dude, yeah.
I relate to him on several levels.
Yeah, like, it's just some of his followers that I have a problem with.
Oh, many of them. Not just some of them. Most of them. I have problems with most of them.
Yeah.
I have problems with most of them. But it's like, okay, I get that. And I get that people have problems with it because they've been so affected personally by it. So...
But I also feel like when we solely judge someone based on the religion that they practice or the spirituality that they practice, we are not seeing the full side of them.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
So even I know a lot of people within the pagan community who are very anti-Christian.
Yeah, no.
Because they've been hurt. And it's almost like when you go back into like nerd culture and things like that, where we have these gatekeepers that pop up.
Yeah.
Because...
Are you really nerdy? How nerdy are you? Right. Can you tell me what the first Flash's name was? Was it Barry or was it Wally? Do you know? No, you don't. It's fine.
So,
you're not nerdy enough for us. You're not nerdy.
I think that gatekeeping is really this great big like defense mechanism. And I feel like people within the spirituality community become gatekeepers for people who are Christian. Either they want to be with other people who are like them, so people that are also Christian, or people who are like them and not Christian.
Right.
Because they feel afraid to intermingle because they've been hurt in the past.
Yeah.
So I feel like...
Whereas people that are Christian literally do it because they are very afraid of people that aren't.
Yeah.
Because they are afraid to face and have like conversations that will make them think to themselves, oh shit, I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
So that's... Oh my God, I have so many problems in my life. Life is hard. What I was there was one thing that I was going to mention earlier, and it's that there is a lot of debate about whether... Okay, so Jesus says that he's the only way, but like I said, so we don't actually know what he said in Latin. Like, we don't even know if he was speaking... I think he actually spoke Greek. I don't think he spoke Latin. But, or Hebrew. I'm sorry. My brain's not working today. But regardless, the whole point of that is I don't know that he meant it the way that everyone takes it. Because thinking back to that, people are all over the world.
Yeah.
And they weren't all isolated in Israel or wherever they think Jerusalem or whatever was there. And not everyone would have, at that very moment, stopped dying so that everyone could hear the word of Jesus and just, like, immediately surrender to him. Mm-hmm. So, for me, I don't necessarily think that that's absolutely accurate. Mm-hmm. I think that each person finds their greater spirit and understands that there's a realm beyond themselves, and they need to look for help, mentoring, and when they find that, that's what they're looking for. Yeah. That's the way. Yeah. And some people don't feel like they do need help. And I think atheists are just as, like, important as any other sort of thing. Because atheists teach us that sometimes we have to rely on ourselves. We can't just rely on something else. Right. So I really feel very differently than most fundamental Christians. So when people learn that shit about me, they're like, you're not really Christian then. But I don't call myself a Christian necessarily most of the time. I'm like, I like Jesus. I'm just a follower of Jesus. Yeah. He didn't hurt anyone or do anything terrible. I've been trying to walk on water, but that's not been doing too well lately. I just fall in it. But it's hot outside, so yeah. You know. But yeah, that's the one thing that has always been like, people are always like, you need to go out and spread the word of Jesus. And I'm like, they may already have a Jesus, they just call it something different. Mm-hmm. Like, that's really what I equate all religions with. They just call the same things and the same feelings and same spirits a different word. Yeah. We're all doing similar things. Yeah. It's just we have different traditions and different ways of going about it. Yeah. Exactly. That's kind of how I've always felt it. It's like everybody is looking at this great big, like, gemstone. Mm-hmm. And everybody is seeing a different facet of this gemstone. But together, it all makes up the same thing. Yeah. So, they're all the same edges that are, made out of the same material. It's just like you see a different, slice of color or light or whatever. And so, I would completely agree with you. It's just like that. Yeah. So, but that's how I feel about divine beings. And then what was the second part of that question? So, we kind of covered it. Is there really a difference between, like, offering something to a god versus a goddess, or like a specific, like for Hecate, you don't have to like go into it super personally, but like what would you, okay, first off, does everyone have an altar if they're practicing? Do they all, if they could afford an altar, does everyone kind of prefer to have an altar? Most of the people that I know prefer to have an altar, or a lot of people have multiple altars. Right, because there can be like a working one, there can be like a temporary one that they carry with them sometimes, and then there can be a permanent installation. Yes. Okay. And not only that, but a lot of times people will have different altars for different rooms in the house, different deities. They'll also have, their more spiritual altar that is dedicated to working with a specific god or goddess, like Hecate. Right. And then they'll have a different altar that they use for their own personal work. Okay. So sometimes those things are separate, sometimes they're not. Interesting. It's really, again, it's one of those things where everybody's different. Yeah. Which I think is one of the great things about it. Yeah. Because, every church has an altar. Yeah. Every church has an altar. Yeah. It's like, I would assume every mosque probably has an altar. Every single religious space has an altar. So if you're a pagan, your space is your home. So it would make sense for it to be, to have an altar. And I think a lot of people have something that they would consider that might be considered an altar without realizing it. Oh, yeah. Having a crucifix on the wall in your house. Mm-hmm. Or having, a manger scene out for, Christmas. Oh, my God. Yeah. Do you know someone like that? Did you just at me, though? Did you know that? My mom does that, too. She has one of the really, really old ones, too. Oh, no. My in-laws built it. They built it themselves, and it says The Way. And then it has a Bible verse on it. And they just put, really like, cute. 2 spotlights that shine on it. And it's just, like, they built it themselves. It's cute. That's cute. That's literally all they put out, though. So it's real creepy. It kind of gets back to that original message. So yeah, I can see that. That's the part that they really enjoy about the holidays. Mm-hmm. So, absolutely. They should do what makes them happy. I think they just do it to proselytize.
Well,
because I know them, but that's just me.
Well, proselytizing makes them happy, so
that's what they feel like they're doing their due diligence by putting their little Jesus baby out. So that's fine.
But yeah, and I think
so specifically between so you were talking about Loki. So maybe Loki likes different things than Hecate does.
Yes, definitely.
So is there specific things that like a god versus a goddess would want in an offering, or
it really depends on the god or goddess. With Hecate,
I know you bring her flowers.
I do. I often bring her flowers. That's pretty common across everybody. Just about everybody likes flowers.
Everyone likes flowers.
Yeah. A lot of people I know will keep like living plants or things like that on their altar. They'll have like a potted plant.
So my house is my altar.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just the whole thing. I just bought 2 more plants. We're not going to talk about them because this stream is not about plants. No. But maybe one episode in the future we'll talk about all my plants.
That would be awesome.
I have a lot now. I just keep... Oh my God. Joe gives me like an allowance when we go to the store now. He's like, you can get 2 plants, no more. You have to pick the 2 you want right now. I'm like, okay.
Joe is such a good husband. Oh my God,
you can have 2. And I'm like,
I love
okay.
him.
All right.
So an offering can be lots of different things. It can be an act of devotion. So an offering could be an offering of your time, where you go down and, with Hecate, she often is closely associated with dogs. So if I wanted to do something in her name, I could, go down and volunteer at an animal shelter and work with dogs. Or I could, a lot of times, you could even construe Lent, where you give up something as an offering, as an act of devotion.
Exactly.
So you're sacrificing something for the betterment. For the betterment of yourself in service of a god.
Right.
So a lot of people do that. Some people keep gardens as a way to connect, and as an offering, and then they'll bring things that they grew in their garden. And then there are physical things that you can bring that they like. Candles, incense, flowers, food. A lot of different deities have specific foods and things that they like. Just about everybody likes wine or beer.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, hell yeah.
Some are very particular about like the spirits that you bring them.
Yeah. If you're setting up an altar, is there anything that you absolutely need to have?
Whatever makes you feel connected.
Okay. So it's not like there's not specific things.
No.
Because I was looking, I was watching a YouTube video, and this woman was explaining how to set up an altar. And she said typically to have like a cloth or something laid down, and then to have, if you are a Wiccan, you believe in the god and the goddess equally. So have something that represents the god, and then have something that represents the goddess.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know if there was anything like that.
Sometimes a lot of people do put some form of physical depiction or something that links back to the specific deity that they're working with or spirit that they're working with.
Right.
I know a lot of people who do a lot of ancestor work. So they may create ancestor altars. So anything that would like connect them back to whatever spirits they want to work with, whether it's a physical item that person possessed, like a piece of jewelry or clothing.
Ooh, that's so spooky, because like you're reminding me of my friend, not my friend, my aunt. She does that, but it's not like in a religious sense or a spiritual sense. She just has an altar to like her children.
Oh, cool.
And so like, and it's got like some of their clothes and stuff on it. It's just like, it's interesting.
That's
I never
interesting.
thought about that. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, there's pictures. Well, there's also pictures of us on it, so maybe it's just like an altar to her family.
Well, pictures are a big one too.
Yeah, so there's pictures, and then there's like different items that they used to wear a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So a lot of those things, anything that was very personal to them, anything that holds that really sentimental value that could bring you closer to that person. For Hecate, a lot of her symbols would be, dogs, keys, torches, lamps. There are specific depictions of her either by modern artists or even ancient depictions that we've discovered throughout the Mediterranean. Or what else? Lots of different things, just different things that are associated with her. Mm-hmm. For a lot of time, I now have a lot of different things that really connect me to her. Mm-hmm. Physically, and I even have a statue that is, supposed to depict...
It's a gorgeous statue. Yeah. It's very beautiful.
It's supposed to depict Hecate, mm-hmm. As most people would see her. And I feel very connected to it. But it's not one of those things where she really manifests through it. Mm-hmm. It really just helps deepen my connection with her and reminds me of her.
It's just a nice reminder.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where you have to remember, very much like when we talk about Islam, where we're not worshiping the statue itself, we're worshiping mm-hmm. what it represents.
Right, so, like with the cross, or like with the moon and the star. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, so we did that one. Oh, okay. So, in your opinion, like just anecdotally, mm-hmm. how important do you think it is for witches to be historically accurate? Like, if they're a traditional witch mm-hmm. and they're doing like older rituals, or like, I don't know what I would even say is like a historical ritual or mm-hmm. spell casting or whatever, how important is it that you be historically accurate in like your craft? Is it more about like the feeling?
I think it's more about the feeling.
Okay.
And witchcraft is really just a tool to help you manifest.
Okay.
To put your energy out in the universe and petition the universe like a prayer. Right. To say, hey, I really need some healing for this thing. Or, hey, I really want this job, Right. So it's really just, it's one of those things that it's really just about how you want to do it. One of my favorite things that I've ever seen is a translation of an old spell that was written down in a book, God knows how many hundreds of years ago, where literally you take a bucket, you fill it with water, you walk outside, you dump it on the ground, and you say this incantation that says, there, see, it's not so hard, at the sky, and shake your fist. So, I mean... That's the kind of witch I am.
There, see? It's not so hard.
But, I mean, then you also have the very
you're summoning the rain! I get it now. You're making fun of the weather.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's some sassy shit right there. I just realized.
It's a freaking rain spell.
Oh,
and
my
think it's
God.
Beautiful. It's my favorite thing.
The only thing that I've ever thought would be like stuff people would really want to be historically accurate about mm-hmm. is stuff that's literally more of the crafting. What I mean by like tea blending. People mm-hmm. who are tea witches, I would assume that they probably have recipes that mm-hmm. they very much want to keep as
close as they possibly
can, because it's just like a tradition, and they're like, this is the traditional tea that we drink, and we read the leaves, and this is the divination recipe.
Yeah.
And so I imagine there's some like that, but overall I can't imagine that because like I said, when we were talking about Christianity, like so many people revise the versions of the Bible.
Yeah.
It's just the same way in paganism.
Yeah. And the thing is, when we're talking about, the witchcraft side of things, a lot of our traditional historical materials mm-hmm. no longer exist.
Right, because they were burned or whatever.
Or because it was practiced in secret. Mm-hmm. So things were not written down. It was completely an oral tradition.
Yeah.
Or even beyond that, we can't take everything to a T, because sometimes the things that we're getting, the people who were traditionally taught to read and write were people who were very active within the major religions, mm-hmm. which were very anti-witchcraft through majority of history.
And I can only imagine that there's probably certain things that were practiced back in the day in witchcraft and paganism that you would probably read and you'd be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, stuff that you would not be okay with now.
Yeah, and I think that when we talk about witchcraft, we're pretty much talking about modern witchcraft.
Yeah. For sure.
I think that there's a lot of threads, and I think the underlying idea of what we're doing is the same. But I think that a lot of our historical tradition has been lost, which I think is okay, because I think that witchcraft is specific for the individual witch.
Right.
So I think, there's a difference between witchcraft for each personal witch, and then there's traditional cultural things, like you said, with, the divining of tea leaves and things like that. Right. So you use a specific blend.
Right.
That would be specific to someone's tradition, whether it's within their family or their culture.
Right.
Something that you really want to be really, really accurate on would be something like a traditional ceremony for a specific culture.
Right.
A lot of people throw around the term smudging when they mean smoke cleansing. Mm-hmm. Smudging is a traditional Navajo ceremony that has a lot of different steps and is very, very complex. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times people wave a wand of rolled up sage, dried sage around and call that smudging.
Right.
That's very much not the case. That is a form of smoke cleansing, which is, they fall under the same term, the same umbrella. Mm-hmm. But with smudging, if you're going to use the term smudging, I think that it is important to be respectful of the culture.
Right.
And I feel like that respect is there because you are respecting the tradition of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Because, I had no idea. You just taught me something that I never knew. So I didn't realize that smudging was, a ritual. I literally thought it was, the verb for what you do to the sage.
It very much became that way in the New Age community.
Wow.
And it was sort of, it's still kind of thrown around that way, but it's very much, it's sort of fallen back behind a little bit as people from these indigenous cultures have kind of come back and said, that's not what that means.
Right,
and it's one of those things where the traditional smudging ceremony is something that's very, very sacred and kept very close to the people that practice it. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's something that needs to be respected a little bit more.
Right.
And I feel like when we talk about different cultures and traditions and things, I feel like it's very important to be very respectful of cultures. Right. And I think that that's one of the greatest examples that we have of something being taken out of context and made simple for a mass market.
Right, yeah.
Which is terrible when you get into the New Age community. A lot of times that's the thing that happens, is everything is sort of boiled down and commercialized for a mass audience.
Right, yeah. But I have seen, there's a lot of different ways to cleanse your house with sage, so I'm not surprised. Some people will literally just say you can waft it with a feather, and then other people will literally say they push it into an abalone shell, and then they take the actual wand and go around the windows and along every corner, because you have to touch every single window and every single corner of your house, or it's not cleansed.
Interesting.
And then they even go to the length of they'll put salt in every corner. Mm-hmm. And so that's really interesting. But there's a lot of different ways to cleanse your house, not just with the sage burning and whatnot. It's so crazy.
And there's a lot of different ways to cleanse it. I mean, there are, if we go back into traditional methods, we also have, sweeping the floors. Mm-hmm. That oftentimes, there's a great book by Scott Cunningham, who is one of the best writers on Wicca and paganism ever. He's one of my favorites. But he has a book called Magical Household, and he goes through several different ways to cleanse and purify a home.
Right.
One of them is by sweeping. Mm-hmm. So you sweep out the negative energy, almost like a spring cleaning. Where you sort of stir up that energy and get everything moving. Mm-hmm. There's also floor washing, which comes from more I I want to say like a hoodoo tradition, I believe.
Yeah.
Which you would use Florida water, and you'll actually like scrub the floor with different salts and Florida water and herbs and things like that in order to cleanse it.
Right.
There's also, you can do a blessing on the home with holy water. That's a way to do it. Other people use a blessing of the 4 elements. So they'll go around with representations of the 4 elements, fire, air, earth, and water, and purify the home that way.
So when I was actively part of a church, they had all their members, which I became a part of, and they had us all take a test to see what our gifts were. And my gift was, there's five different ones. And so mine was, oh my God, what was mine? Oh, I feel so bad now. No, it was more than 5. It was like 10 or something like that. Regardless, mine was something to like, it was encouragement. So I can see that about I'm a gift of encouragement, and I'm an encourager. You can actually be like a hybrid of things. So I think encouragement was like my number 1, and they wanted you to find your primary and then your secondary. So I think my primary was encouragement, and then my secondary was like I want to say leadership or something like that. And so they actually put me in a leadership role at the church. Oh, cool. But I was the leader of hospitality. And when you go and you listen to like this whole thing, at the very end, they actually say that you are great at cleansing. And that you can anoint the walls and the floors of churches and homes with oil, and you can send a prayer over the whole home and cleanse it.
That's interesting.
And so it was very interesting. And then it was like, my favorite part, low-key, was when it was like, the way for you to recharge yourself and really connect yourself is to actually take a trip to Jerusalem once every 3 years, where you just save up all your money and just visit it and drink as much wine and enjoy all the atmosphere as much as you can. And I was like, this is really good. I completely agree. I do need to go to Jerusalem once every 3 years and just drink as much as I want. I completely agree with you, book. I like this one. I'm going to write this down.
It's so funny. You started talking about that, and I'm immediately thinking of, what's that dystopian novel that got turned into a movie?
Ready Player One? I'm just kidding. No. That's like the
nerdiest. Divergent. So,
I've never seen that.
At the beginning, you reach a certain age and you take a test. Or a series of different tests, and they put you in one of like 5 groups based on what your skill is.
Interesting.
So, and it's like, you started explaining that, and I'm like, this sounds like Divergent.
Yeah. But there was 10. I think it was 10 different like skills, and they wanted your primary and your secondary, so that they would best place you. Which makes sense, because my old job also did that to me as well. They put me in a colored. They were like, take this test, it'll tell you what color you are. And I was like, okay, this is like the quizzes that I used to take on that freequiz.com website.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. And it was just like, okay, I'll do this for money, you know? Like,
they
I'll
actually,
get paid to do this.
When I went to Aveda for the osteology course, they did that for us as well.
Oh yeah, what color?
They also, they did learning styles.
Oh really?
Yeah, which I thought was really cool. They also did, they discovered our doshas. Which was really, really cool. Which is an Ayurvedic tradition of, different elements within the body, and what's in balance and what's out of balance based on your body type and your personality. So, and there's a whole lot that goes with that to, your activity levels, hobbies you should enjoy, foods you should eat, foods you should not eat.
Right.
It gets very, very in depth. So they did all of this different like testing and stuff on us to kind of learn about us, so they could sort of, and the class sizes were very small and intimate, which I thought was great. So everyone, they really got to know everyone and learn how everyone worked and learned, and learn them on a personal level,
and I really
so
feel
that they could cater the course to
them.
I
was going to say that feels very beneficial.
Yeah.
And so from that, what's my next question? So we did that one. Okay, so I have a silly question.
Okay.
This is the second to last one.
Okay.
You're going to probably ask me, you might know what these are. So someone who does not live in America asked me this question.
Okay.
They asked, do hagstones work?
Oh,
and
very
then,
cool.
They said that they have one above their door. Mm-hmm. They don't believe in witches in, like, the sense of, like, the Wicked Witch of the West or whatever.
Okay.
Or, like, people that are going to come hex them in the middle of the night or curse them if they don't do something nice. But they were just asking, do hagstones work and why? And I was just like, I'll ask that question. But inside my mind, I was like, I need to ask what the fuck that is. So I wrote down, what are they? So, what are hagstones? Do they work? And if they do work, why do they work?
So, a hagstone is a stone that actually has a hole perfectly through the center of it. So
that sounds dope.
Yeah, so the stone around it is still intact.
Okay.
And there's a hole that's been pushed through the rock, with the rock still being intact around it.
Okay.
There's lots of different mythology on what hagstones or fairy stones have been used for.
Oh, so it can also be called a fairy stone?
Yes.
Okay.
There's actually a really fun series. It's a children's series or young adult series called the Spiderwick Chronicles.
Yes, I've heard of this.
Yeah. So it's written by a really, really talented author, Holly Black, whose stuff I absolutely love and adore. She does a lot with, like, sort of the darker side of, like, modern fae, like, folklore and things like that, which is really cool. And in the Spiderwick Chronicles, the boy is gifted this stone that has a hole through it. And through this stone, he's able to see all of these magical fae folk and creatures and things. Mm-hmm. So that's one interpretation of it.
Oh, to see into another world.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And then there's this other interpretation that says that they are great for protection, which is probably why they have that above their door. Mm-hmm. I think that... Personally, I think that the thing that really makes things magical and makes things work is really your belief in it and your intent.
Okay.
I think with witchcraft, you are able to practice witchcraft without spending a dime. Mm-hmm. Literally all you need is your own intent.
Okay.
Really, the rest of it, the candles, the incense, the stones, are really like the frosting on the cake.
Right.
They're not necessary, but they make it taste better.
Right. Yeah.
And they make it pretty, and they make you have more of a connection to it.
Right.
Which I think really helps build your intent and build your focus on whatever your goal might be.
Cool. So the last question,
yes.
Now that you're talking about that, in general, how does casting spells work?
Ooh.
That's my question. Isn't that a good question?
That is a good question.
I just was curious. I've seen one person cleanse a wand.
Okay.
But like you said, wands aren't super necessary. No. It's just your intent.
Yeah.
So essentially, like, do you invoke something? Like, how does it work? At the basic level. And then if you want to, like, add in, like, how would they use a wand? Or how would they use, like... I know that there's candle witches. We haven't talked about those yet.
Yep.
But there's candle witches. There's... I don't know if incense is, like... If there's a specific thing where it's, like, incense witches. But I'm sure, like, most witches probably just use incense in general because it smells amazing.
Yep.
I use incense in my house.
Same.
It's fantastic.
So it really depends on each person's tradition. And really what you want to do. Mm-hmm. Honestly, the only thing that you need is your own intention.
Right.
To really sit down and petition the universe. Mm-hmm. In my personal belief, prayer is a form of spell work.
Right.
So, that doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah.
You know, and then, you know, other things like, medals of saints or rosaries or candles, anything like that is just the dressing.
Yeah.
So it's really just there to help amplify.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, when we're gathering all these ingredients, we're really taking the time to, number one, really set our intention and think about what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And then number two, I think that while we're doing this, we're getting into a mindset of, I can make this manifest. I think it also helps us sort of overcome a psychological block as well.
Right.
Even if, you know, there was something tomorrow that absolutely, without a doubt, me as a science witch, would prove to me that spellcraft didn't work. Mm-hmm. I would disagree.
Right, yeah.
Because for me, even if it is through placebo effect, mm-hmm. it has worked for me.
Right.
And it has helped me grow as a person, spiritually, mentally. So
that's what I tell people when they're like, but what if there isn't a God? And I'm like, I'm so much better as a person just because there's something pushing me to be better and have in mindset, like, how do I want to treat other people in mind? Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like, even if they weren't real, I would still practice the things that I practice because it makes me a better person.
Yeah.
So keeps me mindful. Like you were saying, I think putting all the effort into it, like with gemstones or with candles, you're mm-hmm. picking things with a mindset that you want to set the mood for something. And it's keeping you mindful of your habits. It's keeping you mindful of like what you're doing throughout the day, how you're mm-hmm. acting. Are you, you know, treating yourself with, you know, everything that you want to project out into the world? And are you treating yourself okay? And so on and so forth. It's just like, I think it's just, it keeps you aware of like everything. And like you were saying, like with your altar, mm-hmm. you have a reminder. So you're always mindful of it. It's just like, it's just nice reminders.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I go and I spend time in front of it, or mm-hmm. I spend time cleaning it up or putting something on it, or, you know, just what I'm, my altar to Hecate is in my bedroom. Mm-hmm. So I see it.
When you go to bed, when you wake up.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, you know, as I'm getting dressed, or, you know, I'll spend time there, I'll meditate there, mm-hmm. you know.
Like for me, the plants are kind of a ritual because I have to take care of them. I tend to them just as if I tended to my dogs. And it's just like, in that way, even though I don't worship Mother Earth mm-hmm. or Mother Nature or whatever you want to call it, I do appreciate the earth and I want it to continue thriving and I want to show it appreciation. And in that way, I do that. So it's like, I do it as a sort of ritual, but also it keeps me mindful, like, hey, I need to take care of the fucking earth because I'm in charge of it. Yeah. So, like, I need to take good care of it. Shit. So.
Well, here's the thing. Earth will survive without us, no matter what.
Right, but
it's
while
us
I'm here,
that have to be careful about our survival.
Right. But with us here, we should all be in charge of taking care of it to mm-hmm. the best of our ability. Because even though we can die and perish and it will still thrive, mm-hmm. I like to leave a place in better condition than when I entered it.
Yes. Were you a Girl Scout too?
Funny story. Funny story. I was never a Girl Scout.
Really?
My mom was like, do you want to be a Girl Scout? And I was like, yes, I would, very much. That's like something that I've always heard is very cool, and my friends talk about it at school. And so she's like, all right, I'm going to take you to Girl Scouts. We look up the meeting, like it's at this place, at this time. We go there. We are running late, because my mother is perpetually late. It's in this giant place. My mother says, those are the doors. And I run up, and I open the doors, and intending like to like rush to a seat or whatever. I open it up, it's all boys. It's the Boy Scouts. Aww. The ads were right beside each other. Aww. And my mom was like, let's go. And then I was like, never again. I'm never going to ever go to something. So I would have been a Girl Scout had something not intervened and been like, you don't really need that. You already mm-hmm. know to keep the world in a better place than what you entered it in.
Yeah, that had already been instilled in you.
Yeah. So it's fine. I don't think about that a lot at all. I only talk about that story like once a week. But no.
Well, you know, the Boy Scouts now allows girls in.
Yeah, just because the girls allow boys in, that's literally it. Or transgendered people, you know, or non-binary people. Yeah. They literally just do that to compete with each other because the boys were like, oh shit, we're going to lose people. So now they're like, we got to catch up to them. Yeah. So that was, yes. I have always felt like I'm very much a conservationist. Like, my parents are huge hippies. Like, I can't help it. It's just what was instilled in me from when I was a young child. Because I told you last week, my grandmother and my great-grandmother have been gardeners. And my mother is a gardener. And I'm a gardener now, even though I need to take out the rabbits. I need to take them out. They ate all of my carrots. Every single one of them is gone. Yes. I even left them an offering. I left them an offering at the back of the house where I put all the crappy carrots so they could just eat those first and leave my other ones alone. But they're all gone now. So I was like, okay, I'll just leave them in there forever and never plant carrots ever again. But it's okay. The tomatoes are safe.
Well, that's good.
They can't eat anymore because they've eaten all the ones that they can reach with their little bunny legs.
As long as they don't, like, start gnawing at the bottom to try to topple it over.
Oh, they wouldn't do that. Okay. Well, they'd have to actually get inside, like, the tomato cage, and I don't think they're okay with that. Yeah. I think they'll put their paws up on it to, like, reach higher. Yeah. But I don't think that they'll actually go into it. Yeah. Mostly because if my dogs happen to go outside, they are murdered. Yeah. It would take them too long to get out, and then they'd be toast. They'd be toast. So, otherwise, I'm pretty good at gardening, and I understand that it gives me food, and in return, like, everything. People who are vegans, I understand why they're vegans because of, like, the industrial and commercial, like, problems of the meat industry, and I completely understand that, and I get that from them. But it's like, when I garden, I have to fertilize my garden with bone meal and blood meal, and that comes from, like, the same dead animals. Yeah. Like, I don't get to choose. They all die, and they all are probably slaughtered, and that's where I get, because I don't have a choice. I can't keep a cow in my neighborhood. The HOA would literally evict me, so I can't keep a cow and then slaughter it for myself. Though that would be really great if I could afford to, like, keep a cow and then feed it and, like, that'd just keep it for, like, a couple of years and then slaughter that sucker. I'd do it.
Oh yeah.
But otherwise, I understand that vegans are like, commercial meat industry, it is terrible. Yeah. But everyone feeds everyone else. Yeah. Like, when I die, my body will go into the earth and it will feed all the grass around it and all the plants that grow from it. Yeah. And so on and so forth. Like, the grass, cows eat the grass. And actually, when the cows eat when cows eat the grass actually creates soil. Because not everything is eaten. So there's a lot of waste that cows, give off. And then even their poop helps with fertilizing the grass. It's just like this whole cycle, and then the cows die. Yeah. And so on and so forth. So it's just like, I see it in such a clear, big picture that I can't separate anything from anything else. It's just like, when I take care of the plants, I'm taking care of everything. Like, I'm taking care of myself, I'm taking care of the dogs, I'm taking care of the cows, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So
I totally agree, and I think it's one of those things where I've always been very conscious of the honoring of the sacrifice of the plant or the animal, because we actually have scientific studies that prove that, I mean, plants are feeling pain too. They can feel when they're picked, when they're eaten. So, they're conscious of it. Yeah. And, to the point where, grass, that smell that you smell after grass is cut, that smell is the grass that was cut because it thinks it's being eaten or hurt, warning all of the other grass blades around it, hey, there's danger. Yeah. So, like, that I think is really, really interesting. And I feel like there is no way to be able to survive without consuming some form of life.
Right. Of course, yeah.
There is no easy way out of it. And I wish that there could be a way where everything was painless and cruelty-free. Yeah. But there isn't one. Yeah. And I think that when we get back into, the delving into spirituality, I think we really see the honoring of the sacrifice and the respect of using the entirety of the animal.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is why it's one of those things where, even though I've been exposed to vulture culture and, I keep bones and pelts and things and stuff like that in my house, I don't think that I would consciously take the life of an animal.
Right, yeah.
But I do respect the people who do it for the betterment of others.
I would probably kill the bunnies if I could. I'd murder them. I'd murder just because there's so many bunnies. Like one time I looked out there and there was 10. And I was like, these bitches gotta
Release
go.
The dogs.
They gotta go. The dogs won't catch them though. Like sometimes they catch them. They've caught one.
Yeah.
Certainly there will be more.
I remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a bad day for Joe.
That was a bad day for Joe. But regardless, still, the dogs need to kill more of them. They should just know. They should just know there's dogs, but they're smarter than the dogs, and they don't care. There's strength in numbers. They would, I'm so surprised that the dog didn't get hurt at all. He is like a natural predator of the bunny.
Yeah.
He will murder them.
Yep.
Which is great. I just need to keep them out there all the time.
Yeah.
Just let them live out there in the fence. Then I would never have problems.
Yeah. So, like, me personally, I would never go hunting. But I respect the people that do it because it's necessary to control the population. And as long as that person is doing it and is using as much of the animal as they possibly can, I have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah. For sure.
For someone who, now granted, I have also come across carcasses and things like that in the woods where someone has, shot and killed a deer and then just cut the antlers off and left the remainder of the deer there in the woods.
Right.
That feels very disrespectful to me.
Yeah.
But we also have to consider, the carrion and things like that are in the woods, that are in, feed on the roadkill on the side of the road.
I mean, that deer was going to die eventually.
Yeah.
To be fair. But, yeah, I think that's why there's the laws and regulations put there to say, oh, you can only kill this many deer. Deer are also a plague on this earth. I will tell you, my grandmother fights with them in her garden.
Constantly.
Yes, constantly. Yeah. Because they know that they can't be hunted in residential areas. So they stick to the residential areas now.
Yep.
I've seen like 5 deer in her backyard just munching away.
Well, I mean, that's also where we're having an issue now with coyotes.
Yeah.
My mom has several coyotes that she sees in her backyard, and she lives in a residential area. There's a wooded lot with a creek that runs through the trees in between 2 neighborhoods. And her house backs up to that wooded lot. And the coyotes come in there and she sees them all the time.
Yeah.
Because we have this little ecosystem, this food chain.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that even though nature can seem cruel, things are the way they are for a reason.
Yeah.
And I totally respect people who want to be vegan, because I think that a lot of our culture is based around, eating lots and lots of meat.
Yes.
And I think that we could all do a good thing and cut back, and I think that would be good for the environment.
Oh,
but
definitely.
Also, just eating plants, if we all switched over and all just ate plants, that would be an imbalance the other way.
Yep.
Everything, there has to be a little give and take of everything.
Yeah.
So if we do too much of one thing or too much of the other, we tip the scales too far.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree with you, like, fully that we eat too much meat. So typically Joe and I so we're on a ketogenic diet, which means you eat mostly fat. So we eat a lot of avocados and a lot of mayonnaise
and eggs.
Yes. So
cheese.
Like our lunch is usually vegetarian. So like when you come over to my house, and you're gonna stay, and then we'll wake up and I'm gonna make like a lunch for everyone, or like I guess it's really a breakfast because we're gonna leave around 10 o'clock, I guess. But I'm gonna make it for like all of us before we leave. I'm gonna take avocados, peel them, pit them, and then put a quail egg inside each little opening, and then put cheese over that.
Oh,
and then you bake it in the oven, and so that's vegetarian.
That sounds absolutely delicious.
But it's awesome for you, and like the interesting thing with ketogenic diets is that it's giving you ketones, which are actually the main thing that your brain uses to break down the amino acids and fats and things that it needs. Like, its main source of energy comes from ketones, breaking stuff down. It's not carbohydrates like most people think it is.
Yeah.
So we have, like, a big problem of probably eating too much meat because we're not eating enough fats because we think they're bad for us. And so actually carbs are the main thing that cause like a reaction of hunger. Like the thing where you get hunger pains, that's from you having no more carbs.
Yeah.
If you're on a ketogenic diet.
Because carbs get turned directly into sugar.
Yes. And so...
And sugar is sugar.
Sugar is sugar. Sugar is delicious. But there's two different kinds of sugars. There's some sugars that can only be broken down by your liver. And there's other sugars like glucose, which is great because it can be broken down by every cell in your body.
Yeah.
So it's okay in certain forms, and then it's okay in the other forms, just a lot less. A lot less. So they, you know, the carbs, when they're completely gone and exhausted, your body's like, I don't have any more food, even though it probably has plenty of protein and fats still in your stomach digesting. It's just like, I don't have that immediate energy anymore. Oh no, woe is me. So it's just that one thing where I really feel there's a big circle of life and we're all a part of it, whether we want to or not. But I completely do respect vegans and everything like that. Especially if it's like, some people are just better with vegan diets because they don't, first of all, they don't digest proteins very easily, and they just need something else to replace that, which is fine.
And I mean, for some people it is also necessary. We've had a rise of tick bites in this area recently. Yeah. And we've actually had a migration of a specific tick called the Lone Star tick, which can actually carry a, is it a parasite or a virus? I can't remember.
It's a virus that causes an allergy to red meat.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, sometimes it's necessary.
Yeah.
And if it makes you feel good, I mean, absolutely, by all means. But the thing that bothers me is when people degrade me for not being the same as them. Yeah. I think that goes not just for vegans or... Yeah,
I was going to say, it goes for everything. Yeah. It's like, if you're trying to push something on me because you believe that it's the best, it's not. Yeah. And you're just making it look bad. It's like, calm down.
I'm super happy for you, but maybe that doesn't work for me. And I just ask that you respect that.
There you go. Yeah. All right, so I want to wrap this up. Okay. By doing a tarot reading. Cool. And this is where Mogget comes into play. The story about Mogget. Kitty, 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 kitty. Cricket did this adorable thing earlier. She set out all of her card decks that she had down here, and she let Mogget pick the card deck that we were going to use. Yeah. So we'll be doing this for each episode from now on. Wendy will get a surprise next time because she doesn't know about this yet. But from now on, we're going to be doing a tarot reading, just a one-card tarot reading at the end of each episode. And so I heard that. It was just
you heard it too. Yeah. I don't know if it was the neighbors or the cats upstairs. Yeah.
It's good that you have cats upstairs.
There's a Mogget.
Yeah, there's a Mogget sitting on his little pillow.
In the window.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, he's yawning. That was a good yawn, Mogget. That was a good one.
We'll have to post a picture of Mogget.
Yes. Oh my goodness, yes. Oh, yeah. So you can just shuffle however many times you'd like. Okay. It's going to be great. You're going to do fantastic.
So, is there a specific intention that you... Oh, we need some jumpers.
Ooh. I think what we could do for this is just, maybe we'll just pull one card for a tarot reading just to kind of like set the tone for the next week. Okay. Just kind of like things that can... What are we expecting in the next week until the next episode? Yeah. Does that make sense? But I think that's a good idea. I think it'll just be nice. It'll help us like set the tone, and like we'll have, maybe if you don't know anything about tarot cards, you'll learn something. Yeah. So
we could do several episodes on tarot too.
Oh my god, yeah. So before we pull a card, this is the Ostara Tarot.
Yeah.
I think I've glanced at this once. Oh, this is the one with the 4 people.
Yes.
So this tarot deck is actually a culmination of 4 artists that made these tarot cards. Is this just a typical Rider-Waite deck?
It is.
Okay. So we'll go into that on a separate episode about tarot cards. But there's 3 different kind of like deck types, and this one's a Rider-Waite. You don't need to worry about that. That's a little above your pay grade right now. But do you want to talk about like the imagery of this?
Sure. So the really cool thing is that, like Brittany had said, the really cool thing is that the deck was actually divided between 4 different artists who each took a suit and then divided the major arcana into 4 different parts. So the way the tarot works is that you have cards between 0 and 21. Sorry, I can never remember exactly how many.
I know it's 22. It's 22 cards, but it's because the Fool is 0, and it's very confusing.
Yeah,
they just like to make it difficult.
Of course.
Yeah.
That sort of travel along what we would call the hero's journey. If you've ever taken a literature class or a film appreciation class, you've probably heard of it.
Yeah.
A lot of our basic stories kind of follow that archetype. So there are 22 cards there, and we said 21. And then you have your suits, which would be the coins or pentacles, wands, cups, and swords. So think of those almost like the regular cards in like a card deck.
Yes.
So like your spades, your hearts, your clubs, your diamonds. And you can actually read, like do divination and card fortune telling and stuff with regular playing cards too. And we can talk about that later because
for sure.
And it's super fun.
Yes, I've also found out that you can definitely use them in Lenormand readings, which we'll talk about those later on. That's a different kind of reading, but yeah.
Oh, cool.
People used to do that using just regular playing cards. They would do the Lenormand readings.
Yeah.
So
they each took one of the suits and then divided up the major arcana, which are the 0 through 21 cards, between themselves, and each used their own style of art to really sort of bring the tarot deck to life. A lot of it is based on, it's very whimsical, very brightly colored, lots of different animals and people, and just really, really beautiful. It is available on Amazon. I was one of the lucky ones who got to pre-order it. It was super fun. I had so much trouble waiting for it.
But it's called the Ostara Tarot.
Yes. But it's really, really, really gorgeous.
It is.
And the back is like a really pretty pale green, and it has 2 bird skulls and some flowers around it, some crescent moons. And then the edges are all gilded with like really shiny silver.
Yeah.
So it's really, really pretty deck. I really recommend it. All right. So I know we've entered Leo season now.
Ooh.
And we're actually approaching...
I have no idea what that means.
So, when we follow like our traditional Western astrology, we go through different seasons and cycles. Okay. So if you were someone who was called, who
is Mercury in retrograde right now?
It is. I think it actually just went in retrograde today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good for us. This is when the podcast is coming out.
Oh,
Mercury just went in retrograde. Dated. It's dated. There you go. Now you know.
But we're actually in Leo season. So if you were to go up to someone and ask, what's your sign? And someone would respond, oh, I'm an Aries, or I'm a Taurus.
Right.
That would be someone's sun sign.
Right.
So when we talk about different seasons like that, we're talking about the season of going through like this sun sign. So like it's almost like a clock, and like between 12 and 1 is Aries, and then 1 and 2 is Taurus. So it goes all the way around.
All the way around, yeah.
Yep. So in between all of that would be the quote-unquote season of whatever sign it was.
That makes sense.
So right now we're currently in Leo season. So anyone who was born between the start of this and the end of this would be a quote-unquote Leo.
Gotcha.
Now, granted, we could go even further into astrology and talk about moon signs and Mercury signs and houses.
And Pluto, and how Pluto needs to be in Scorpio.
Yes.
That's all we know.
Yes. So, super, super good things. And, but I think we have to save that for a different podcast.
Yeah. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in length at one point. We'll
that'll
go
be
into
super
that.
Fun.
Yes. And we should have Wendy there because she doesn't know about any of this.
No.
So we should
have to read her chart.
Yes, that would be great. That would be perfect because she's never had her chart read.
Ooh.
So she would be, oh my God, she'd be a great guinea pig. She'd be like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
And then we'll look at her Scorpio in Pluto and we'll be like, congratulations. Congratulations.
Yep. So, Leos are typically very artistic, very charismatic. They like to
very boastful.
Yes, very boastful. They like to have fun. So it's really Leos are very much like the epitome of like summer break. Yeah, where it's all about being very playful, having fun, things being really warm and sunny. Like that's very much a Leo.
Yeah.
So that's sort of like the vibe that we're getting right now from where the sun is. And there's a lot of other stuff that's going on astrologically, like some eclipses and things like that. And then tomorrow night, there is actually a full lunar eclipse.
Oh, wow.
Which will, or maybe it's Friday night. I can't remember.
One of those days.
One of those days. It's a full lunar eclipse.
Yeah.
And it's actually the longest one for the next several years.
Oh, wow.
And it's going to be absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, and it's in the sign of Aquarius, which is actually my moon sign.
Oh, look at you!
Yeah! So
very
I'm
nice.
super duper excited.
That's very cool.
So it's a really, really big time. There's lots of different stuff happening. Mars is also in retrograde. Mercury just went into retrograde.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different planets up there that are doing lots of different things.
That's cool.
So, and we can talk more about astrology and my opinions on it later.
Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh, yes. We should
have a whole episode. When I read tarot, I do like to kind of give that, be mindful of where the planets are at.
Yeah, there's actually there's a person that I watch on Twitch called Aphrodite, and he does the exact same thing. Yeah. He talks about he does the same thing where he reads someone's chart and then he correlates it to everything that's going on in the sky right now and then does the tarot. He's crazy talented.
That sounds awesome.
He knows so much.
That's super, super cool.
Yeah, it's very, very cool.
Margaret, did you fart?
He's like, I don't know.
That's a yes.
I don't know.
That's a yes. Look at him. He's proud.
Yeah, he is. He's very proud. Yeah. We got you. We see you. We know.
All right, so... Ooh, okay. So I am feeling a lot of energy on this, so I'm feeling good with that. So let's go ahead and pull our card.
Pull it!
Ooh, okay.
What is this? Ooh, it's fancy.
That is the 10 of Wands.
10 of Wands! Oh, shit, bitch. Ooh, let me tell you. Wands are a fire sign. Yep. Fire signs represent passion. Things that you're very passionate about, like hobbies.
Yep.
Discovering things. It's just dope. I like to think of wands also like torches guiding the way to something that you love.
It's also like the initial spark of creativity or bringing something into being.
Yes.
So the 10 of Wands that I actually drew is reversed. So based on how different people read cards, cards can be reversed or in the upright position. So, and based on that, they have different meanings. So usually when things are reversed, things are, or is it reversed? Was it like this?
I don't know.
I don't know.
When you said that it was reversed, I turned it upside down and it was like this. So is the number supposed
upside,
to be?
Yeah.
So this is right side up?
Yeah.
So it was reversed.
Okay,
yeah.
so it was reversed.
Yeah.
I thought it was, but I was second guessing.
Yeah, because it was, when I picked it up, it looked like this. And I was like, okay, all right.
All right, so the Ten of Wands reverse indicates that you are unnecessarily holding on to a burden that is no longer serving you. Do not take on more than you can handle. Be wary of doing work for others at the expense of your own happiness. If you're going through a challenging time, Ten of Wands foretells a coming release from a negative cycle.
Nice.
So a lot of this, like, astrology forecasts and stuff that I've read, has definitely been that sort of a thing.
You are what did you say? You felt like you were an arrow notched on a bow, and you're ready to just launch into like the next section. Where
I felt like for the past several months, maybe even years, I felt like someone is continually like pulling me back and pulling me back and pulling me back, and I'm just ready for that string to be released.
The tension to be gone. Yeah.
And for that tension to just rocket me forward.
Yeah.
So I feel like a lot of people are sort of feeling like that, like they're feeling sort of stuck, like they can't get anywhere. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the forecasts that I've read have definitely been saying that this eclipse season, this sort of period, is definitely that point where it's a lot of healing. It's a lot of letting go.
Right.
It is a lot of, just total rebirth and growth and like completely shedding the former self.
Yeah.
Which is definitely what I see within this card.
Right.
Especially with it being reversed. And when we let go of those things, when we take the advice of these cards, we put things right again. Mm-hmm. So we put the card back up into its upright position so that we can fully manifest our creativity, our inspiration, all of these, the passion, all of these things that we want.
Right.
So I think that that's really, really cool. So I love seeing that sort of overlap between.
Yeah, that is really, really cool. That's neat. So if this next week happens for you and lots of shit gets resolved so you can feel more free to do things that you are passionate about, you're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome. But thank you for listening to us. Next week you can expect Types of Witches Part 2.
Ooh.
And Wendy will be here with us. We're very excited. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye!